Welcome. If you're looking to really get to grips with complex stories, cut through the noise, you're in the right place. That's what we do here. Today, we're doing a deep dive into a case from India that's still, well, deeply puzzling. The 2008 double murder of Arushi Talwar and Hemraj Banjad. It's a case where, honestly, the more you look into it, the less clear things seem to become. It really shows how investigations, when flawed and intense media pressure, can just muddy the waters completely.
Absolutely. It's a case that, it still troubles and fascinates people. It asks some really tough questions about justice, how it works or sometimes how it doesn't.
So let's set the scene. We're in Noida, near Delhi. It's May 16, 2008. 13-year-old Arushi Talwar is found dead in her bedroom.
Horrific discovery. Throat slit, skull fractured.
And straight away, the focus, the initial suspicion, it lands on the family's domestic helper, Hemraj.
Which, it might seem like a standard procedure initially, investigating someone close who was, at that point, missing. But assumptions can solidify very quickly, sometimes too quickly.
Exactly, because the very next day, a huge twist. Hemraj's body is found.
On the terrace of the same apartment building.
Right. And both victims, they were killed with what reports called surgical precision. That detail always stood out.
It implies a certain skill, perhaps, or at least familiarity with using a sharp instrument effectively.
And crucially, no sign of forced entry into the apartment. So boom, the central mystery is laid bare. How did this happen? The main suspect is now the second victim. Who could have done this?
That lack of forced entry is, well, it's pivotal, isn't it? It strongly suggests the killer or killers were known to the family, someone who could get in easily.
Okay, so let's unpack that initial investigation, because the source material we looked at suggests some pretty serious missteps right from the beginning.
Oh, definitely. The early police work was frankly marked by some alarming errors. The crime scene itself, its integrity was compromised pretty badly.
Oh, what went wrong there?
Well, the data points to a massive failure in just basic forensic procedure. Get this, 22 out of the 24 fingerprints they collected, botched, unusable.
22 out of 24. That's
Yeah.
huge. It basically blinds them right at the start.
Completely. Hinders any chance of identifying unknown individuals at the scene from the get-go.
And then, almost unbelievably, Hemraj's body wasn't found on the first search.
Yeah.
How does that even happen? Missing a body on the premises.
It's a massive oversight. It raises serious questions about how thorough that initial search really was. And, of course, delaying the discovery meant losing crucial time, potential evidence degrading.
Right, so botched fingerprints, a missed body, and then the suspicion suddenly pivots. It moves away from Hemraj, the now dead helper, onto Arushi's parents, both dentists. What caused that shift?
It seems like a mix of things. The lack of forced entry was key, obviously. The parents were in the house, maybe some initial assumptions by the police, and then theories started flying around.
What kind of theories?
All sorts. Honor killing was mentioned, suggestions of an affair, maybe leading to a confrontation, even the idea of just a sudden accidental rage.
But, and this seems really important, there wasn't actual hard evidence linking the parents directly at that stage, was there?
No, not really. That's the critical point. Despite all these theories swirling around, the police didn't have definitive forensic proof connecting Rajesh and Nupur Talwar to the killings.
Okay, so the police are struggling, and then the CBI steps in, India's Central Bureau of Investigation.
Yes, they take over. But even their investigation wasn't straightforward. Their focus shifted too.
Right, they initially went after the Talwar's other domestic affairs, didn't they?
Yeah.
Using narco-analysis tests.
They did. Which is interesting because narcoanalysis, it's not actually admissible as evidence in Indian courts.
Why not?
Concerns about reliability, basically. You can't be sure if confessions under those drugs are true or suggested, but it shows the pressure they were under, maybe grasping at straws.
And anyway, those servants were let go eventually.
Yeah.
Lack of evidence.
Correct. No solid proof against them either.
So then the CBI issues this closure report, and this is where it gets quite confusing, because they named Dr. Rajesh Talwar as the prom suspect.
But, and this is the kicker, they admit they don't have enough evidence to prosecute. They acknowledge gaps in the proof.
It sounds like they're saying, we think he did it, but we can't prove it in court.
That's a pretty accurate summary, I think. The report basically laid out a circumstantial case, lots of interconnected points suggesting guilt, but no smoking gun, no direct evidence.
Yet, despite that lack of definitive proof in the closure report, a trial court did convict both parents in 2013. Based on that circumstantial evidence.
Yes, the trial court felt the chain of circumstances presented by the CBI was strong enough to point conclusively to the parents' guilt.
Which naturally led to an appeal. And the Allahabad High Court's decision in 2017 was quite different.
Very different, a strong acquittal. The High Court was quite critical of the CBI's investigation. They pointed to potential evidence tampering, definite signs of bias. They basically took the prosecution's case apart.
They highlighted inconsistencies, the lack of a solid foundation.
Exactly. They found the circumstantial chain had too many breaks, too many unanswered questions.
But it's still not over, is it? The Supreme Court is involved now.
That's right. Appeals are still being heard by the Supreme Court, which tells you just how contested this whole thing remains. The uncertainty lingers at the highest levels.
It really underscores the lack of consensus, even legally.
Precisely. Decades later, and the definitive legal answer is still, in some ways, pending.
Okay, let's dig into those forensic problems more specifically, because they seem central to the confusion. First off, the murder weapon was never found.
Never. That's a huge gap in any murder case. Makes it incredibly hard to confirm how the injuries were inflicted or definitively link someone.
There was that theory about a golf club, right? Or in Dr. Talwar's.
Yes, that was pursued. A specific golf club was seized. But crucially, forensic analysis showed that blood stains found at the scene, particularly on Hemraj's pillow, didn't match that specific club. That weakened the theory significantly.
And then DNA evidence, often seen as the gold standard. But here, problems too.
Big problems. Reports of contaminated samples, which, in a case like this is disastrous. Contamination can throw everything off, lead to false inclusions or exclusions. It just makes the results unreliable.
So you can't really trust what the DNA might have seemed to show.
Not with any certainty, no.
And there were other issues mentioned. Arushi's vaginal swab results were unexplained. Post-mortem reports inconsistent.
Yes, inconsistencies in the timings and findings across different post-mortem examinations.
Yeah.
And the vaginal swab results, they yielded unclear or conflicting information that fueled speculation but didn't provide solid leads.
Just paints a picture of, well, forensic chaos, almost.
It's certainly not the clear, rigorous forensic investigation you'd hope for. The cumulative effect of all these issues, the missing weapon, the unmatched club, the contamination, the inconsistencies, it just means the scientific evidence was far from conclusive.
And all of this is playing out under this incredibly intense media spotlight. How did that affect things? The sources suggest it wasn't helpful.
That's putting it mildly. The case became a national obsession. A media circus, as one source aptly put it, and sadly, a lot of the coverage leaned heavily into sensationalism, not objective reporting.
Can you give examples of that?
Oh, sure. There was relentless speculation about Arushi's character. Invasive and unfounded claims were published. The Talwars were often portrayed as guilty before any verdict based on hearsay or conjecture.
Like character assassination, almost.
To a degree, yes. And the honor-killing angle was pushed very hard by some sections of the media, often without much factual basis, crowding out other possibilities.
So this phenomenon of trial by media was really in full swing here.
Absolutely. Public opinion was heavily swayed, often against the parents, well before the courts had finished their work, and arguably based on very shaky evidence presented in a sensational way.
It really shows the danger of that, how it can prejudice proceedings and public perception.
Immensely. It makes a fair assessment of the facts incredibly difficult when there's so much noise and, frankly, bias in the public sphere.
So if we pull all these threads together, the flawed initial investigation, the missing weapon, the dodgy forensics, the shifting CBI theories, the media frenzy, it leaves us with so many unanswered questions.
Huge questions and significant lingering doubts.
The big one being, if the Talwars didn't do it, who did?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the evidence, or lack thereof, makes it incredibly hard to answer.
That point about no forced entry keeps coming back.
It does. It strongly suggests someone known to the family, someone who could get in and out without breaking doors or windows. And the security guard reportedly saw no strangers entering or leaving.
What about the robbery theory? That came up, but wasn't much taken.
Only Arushi's phone was reported missing, which seems odd for a robbery motive that results in 2 brutal murders. You'd expect more disturbance, more items gone. It doesn't quite fit the pattern.
So maybe not a robbery gone wrong.
It seems less likely than other scenarios, perhaps involving someone already inside or with easy access.
At the end of the day, the sources seem to converge on a pretty bleak conclusion. We might just never know for sure what happened.
That is the deeply unsettling reality of this case. The passage of time, the compromised evidence. It means the definitive truth might be lost.
It leaves this void, doesn't it? Where justice feels incomplete.
Absolutely. And it forces us to think about accountability when the system itself falters.
Looking back, this case feels like a real cautionary tale, highlighting multiple system failures.
It really does. It's a stark lesson on the critical need for, well, competent and unbiased policing from the very start. The initial hours are so crucial.
And media ethics, too. The responsibility of reporting versus sensationalizing.
Definitely. And fundamentally, how easily bias, whether conscious or unconscious, can derail the search for truth.
So, thinking about everything, the botched investigation, the lack of solid proof, the High Court's findings, how do you weigh the possibility of the Talwar's involvement against these clear systemic failures?
Well, the High Court acquittal is very powerful. There's specific findings about potential evidence tampering and bias within the CBI investigation itself. That's incredibly damaging to the prosecution's narrative.
It casts serious doubt on the whole process that led to the conviction.
It does. While we can't definitively point to another killer based only on this information, the sheer number of investigative failures and forensic problems makes it extremely hard to accept the original conviction with any confidence. The foundation just seems too shaky.
So this deep dive really ends not with answers, but with more profound questions.
Exactly. It's a story that sticks with you, makes you think about justice, truth, and how elusive they can sometimes be. Even with intense scrutiny, the full picture might just stay out of reach.
It definitely makes you question how reliable investigations always are, and how much public perception, whipped up by media, can influence the path to justice or injustice. A really sobering case.